Good morning, lads and lasses. Today's video is a bit of a personal one and also a topic that has been requested quite a bit, both by people in my personal life and folks online, because today we are talking about my training, what my regime looks like. I'm going to speak a little bit on my current goals as well, how my training relates to that. Maybe go a little bit into diet as well. And yeah, just give you a bit of an overview so you have an idea of what the application of the stuff I talk about might actually look like. Fundamentally, the training program I am currently on for strength and building muscle is a 5 days a week regime. So 2 days of rest and 5 days of training. Now, one of those 2 rest days is relatively fixed. So I usually take Sunday off completely from strength training. One of the reasons why is because Sunday is one of my standard martial arts days. So it's typically a day where I will do martial arts training, and it's also a day where I generally go pretty hard. I roll a lot. I don't work a lot on technique, and I roll against some pretty tough opponents. So it's a good day to skip strength training. My other rest day is actually not fixed. So I will take it either after the first 2 days of training or after the first 4 days of training. And sometimes on rare occasion, I will take it after the first 3, sort of in the middle of my program, and then work out for 2 days after and have a rest day at the end. Now, why does it make more sense to take that rest day after the first 2 or the first 4 days? That is because my program is a sort of back and forth between more push and more pull focused days. At the same time, though, it's also kind of a bro split. So it's a sort of amalgamation of different kinds of workouts that I have done in the past. How does this work? On Monday, for example, I train chest, but I don't train exclusively chest. I train chest as the sort of primary focus of the day. Then I move on to delts, especially front delts, which are, of course, also trained with the chest work I do. And I combine that with some work for the biceps, because I'm already working the triceps to a significant extent on my chest and front delt work. And then at the end of the day, and I will do this on essentially every workout, I got some extra sets in there for my abs, forearms, neck. Sometimes I'll just do abs, sometimes I'll just do neck or forearms, but generally speaking, those sort of extra specialization exercises, because these are areas that I care about a lot for functionality, they are always to some extent in there at the end of the workout. So my first day is chest focused with some shoulders and some biceps isolation in there. What am I doing on the other days? You will be perhaps shocked to learn that I do not have a dedicated leg day. I kind of split my leg work between different days. I have kind of spread it out. I train my legs twice a week. One of those days is, just a couple of heavy squats. And then on another day, I work posterior chain and I do some weighted Hindu squats, which are kind of a combination of quad work, a little bit of glutes in there, but less so, and calves. And yeah, that's all I do. I do 3 exercises for legs throughout the week. I also don't go super hard on them. And the reason why is because I don't want huge legs necessarily. Now, I want my legs to consistently grow, to consistently get stronger, but fatiguing my legs to a significant extent and growing them very quickly, getting them huge, as big as I can possibly get them, is actually counter to my goals, because while very, very big legs are great for stability, when it comes to agility type of stuff, they can actually be a hindrance. You don't need huge legs to have them be strong enough to make crazy jumps, that type of stuff. And really big legs are actually very heavy. So my ideal physique has very strong, sturdy, solid, reliable legs, but I don't want humongous tree trunks. And don't get things twisted here. I do have very strong legs, and they are quite sizable. In fact, my legs are probably the part of my body, of my physique, that is the most genetically gifted. So for a very long time, I got away with not really training my legs at all. Now that is no longer possible. I do have to put in some significant work, but I don't go crazy hard on them. And when I do, I focus on specific things that are important for me. So for example, for things like sprinting, but also climbing to an extent, parkour, having comparatively strong calves is actually very important, because the calves make a big difference in your agility, in your ability to jump, etc., while not being as heavy as the upper part of the leg, right? The calves are not super big muscles, but they make a very, very significant difference when it comes to more athletic endeavors. So I work on my calves quite a bit, and in relation to how big they are compared to the upper leg, probably more so than I do on my quads, for example. So yeah, part of my leg training is on the second day. First day, again, chest, some shoulders, and some biceps work. And then I also train abs and I think neck training on Monday on the first day. And then on Tuesday, we have a lats focus day, but I also do my sort of heavier squats on that day. So I train lats primarily, but of course, because you automatically have the traps in there on most heavy compound exercises for the lats, I combine that with traps as the sort of secondary muscle I would train. So kind of how I train chest and shoulders together, I train lats and traps together generally. And there is one day that is more focused on lats and one day that is more focused on traps. But I do some of the same exercises. So heavy rows, for example, are in there on both days. So again, that second day is a back day essentially, but primarily focused on the lats with traps as the sort of secondary muscle group to be trained. And then I also do some leg work on that day, and I train my triceps because, again, the biceps is already being worked a little bit on that lats and traps workout, and I trained it more specifically on the day before. So the biceps get some rest, and I train the triceps in combination with my back. Doing this, I essentially get to train the entire upper arm a little bit every day. And that is something I took with me from the 6 days a week workout that I was doing last year, which I'm going to get into a little bit as well, because I've actually reduced my volume for some specific reasons. But one of the things that stuck with me is that your upper arms, and to some extent your shoulders as well, can be trained almost every day. So maybe have like 1 or 2 rest days every now and then. But generally speaking, these are pretty small muscles. They recover very, very quickly, and you can just work them every day. I'd say I have pretty sizable arms compared to the rest of my physique. Not completely disproportional, but my arms definitely grew significantly once I started training them essentially every day. So what I'm doing now is I will work either the biceps or the triceps sort of on the side with the main exercises I'm doing in a day. Again, for the chest, or if I'm doing overhead press, the triceps is already getting worked as a sort of secondary muscle in there. And then I'll hit the other part of the upper arm, so in this case, the biceps, in addition to that, which means the biceps is being hit in isolation and the triceps is being hit kind of on the side on the compound movements that I'm doing for other muscles. It's not all the training I do for arms, and we'll get into that as we move on, but this is a kind of strategy for training my arms essentially every day without having to do actual arm exercises every day necessarily. So again, on the second day, we train triceps more specifically with isolation as the counterpart to the compound movements that hit the biceps. And then at the end of the day, we have, again, some ab work. So Monday and Tuesday, we got ab training in there. And then on Tuesday, instead of the neck training, we have some forearm exercises. So some wrist extensions, some training for the thumbs, some finger curls, that type of stuff. Why do I do this training? Because grip strength is one of the most important aspects of being generally capable, of being athletic, of being all around physically fit. You need a strong grip for climbing, for carrying heavy shit, for wrestling, grappling with people. So really, it's one of the most important muscle groups to be functional, or to not have lag behind to be functional. And one of the things I always like to point out is that people like to use straps on some exercises to kind of eliminate the grip as a factor and be able to train their back more effectively. And I think if you do this in moderation, it can make sense. Obviously, it also kind of depends on your goals. But what I would like to point out is that in real life, when you carry heavy shit, when you pick up heavy shit, you don't have straps. And the thing that is generally going to be the limiting factor is not your traps or your lats. The thing that's probably going to be the limiting factor in real life is your grip. Because generally speaking, most people's forearms are not as strong as their fucking back. So can I grow my back way bigger in relation to my grip strength if I use straps on every fucking exercise? Yes, sure. But does it actually make sense to have a disproportionately big back compared to my grip strength when almost everything I would do with that back, almost everything those back muscles actually do in a practical context, is also related to grip? Because at the end of the day, what do the back muscles do? They are mostly for pulling stuff. And whenever you're pulling something, you got to hold on to it, right? If you're pushing things away, not necessarily. You got to keep a stiff arm. You need a strong triceps, sure, but do you need intense grip strength to push someone away? No, not necessarily. But for almost every kind of pulling activity, you do need a strong grip. Bit of a side tangent here, but yeah, that's why I train my forearms, my grip, my individual fingers quite a bit, and I essentially never use straps. I'm maybe going to start doing it a little bit on some very, very heavy pull-ups, but yeah, that's going to be like one, maybe two exercises throughout my entire week that I might use straps on. And generally speaking, I don't recommend doing that on a lot of exercises or even all of your exercises, because at the end of the day, you do also need a strong grip. So there's really no point in having a super strong back, but then your grip is too weak to utilize that back in real life. By the way, since I forgot to go on the same kind of side tangent for neck training, I've actually made a video on neck training. It's going to be somewhere up here. So I'm just going to skip that and you can go ahead and watch the video on why neck training is incredibly important for a functional, powerful physique, for combat sports, for day-to-day life. It's just a must-have, even for people who don't train for muscle growth a lot. I think neck training is one of the things you should still be doing. So yeah, go check out the video and train your neck. Now, after these first 2 days, chest and lats with, again, shoulders and biceps, and legs, traps, and triceps as the kind of secondary muscles trained, I'll sometimes take a rest day. If I feel like I don't need a rest day, I'll move on to the third day. And this one is essentially a reversal of day one. So we are still training chest and shoulders, and of course triceps as a sort of secondary function of that. But now the focus is shoulders, and chest is sort of the secondary muscle group being trained. So I do a lot of shoulder isolation work on this day. I also do a lot of work for the side and rear delts, especially because I mainly do overhead press on Monday for shoulder development. So now the side delts and rear delts get a little bit more love on the shoulder specific day. As on Monday, I will combine this with a biceps isolation exercise, which could also be hammer curls. I'm just going to keep this a little bit more general. So when I say biceps isolation, it might be more sort of standard curls. It might also include training for the brachialis, something like hammer curls. And on triceps, it might be training that is more focused on the long head, that is more behind the head. It might be training that is more focused on just pushing, like straightening the arm, that has no movement of the shoulder involved. I'm not going to get into these details too much because that would probably blow up this video to an absurd 1.5 hours or something. But if you're very interested in the details of this program, a slightly modified version of the training program I am currently on is actually part of the Primal Physique course, which I've recently completed and uploaded, and you can go ahead and get it on my Coffee page down below. It's a course that helps you build the kind of physique I have. So strong, sure, also good looking, but most importantly, all around functional and athletic. It'll make you powerful. It'll make you ready to go 24/7. You're ready for a fight. You're ready for a fun challenge. You can climb, you can run. You have decent endurance, decent strength, decent agility, mobility, just an all-around beast, essentially like a big cat, just a natural hybrid athlete. And if that's something you're interested in, go ahead, check out the course, and get the body you want. And in there, you will also find, again, a very close approximation of the program I currently do. I've made some changes, some slight tweaks, took out a little bit of volume because this is obviously geared more towards beginners and maybe intermediates. And I'm at worst a late intermediate, more of an advanced lifter, really. So the volume is a little bit reduced, but generally speaking, it's essentially the training program I'm currently talking about. Check out the course down below, and let's get back to the video. So on the shoulder day, I don't quite remember what type of sort of specialization work I do at the end. I don't think it's abs. I think I only do forearms or neck, probably neck, because it's a sort of back and forth. But again, we have those extra sets in there. It's probably going to be like 4 sets or something of neck training. And as I mentioned before, I do that stuff every day. I might do some forearms, I might do some neck, I might do some abs in combination with one of those two, but there's definitely some of it on every single day. Let me change my sitting position real quick. because the fucking exercise bench is pushing into my back, which makes it kind of hard to talk. All right. Day 4. Day 4 is probably the shortest day in the entire workout. And that's because it is essentially just back. It's very short, very hardcore though, so quite intense. I focus on traps on this day and obviously automatically do some lats work on the side with that. And then I combine that again with some triceps work. I only do some forearm training at the end for sort of specialization. And yeah, it's a lot of very heavy compound type of lifts. Very short though. I just do like 2 or 3 sets on every one of those lifts. A little bit of triceps work, a little bit of forearm work, and then that's it. And obviously on the other back day, I also have legs in there. So that makes the day longer. Because this day is so short, I will sometimes use that rest day that I would take after the traps day in between my second and third day. So after the lats training, again, I can optionally take my rest day there. And I will often do that because the day where I train traps is so short and so focused on back that it almost feels like a sort of rest day. Not that I'm not training hard, but I'm training so specialized on that day that I often don't need the rest for what is to come after. Because my weekend training is by far the longest day of the entire week. So this is day 5 now. And it is essentially an arm day. So I do a lot of work for biceps and triceps, sort of specifically targeting them. I do a little bit of work for my shoulders as well. And then this is the day where I do most of my leg work. Now that makes the day very long in terms of the amount of sets I'm doing. I'm probably doing like 25 sets in total on my arms day. But since most of that is isolation work for the arms, it's not really that intense. It's not a lot of fatigue. It doesn't feel like a lot of work. And because of this fact, throwing legs in there, training legs on this day where I'm essentially doing nothing with my lower body and nothing that's super heavy, that's really taxing my nervous system otherwise, it just makes sense, in my opinion. So yeah, lots of arms, a little bit of like 2-3 sets of shoulders as well. I just do some behind the neck press or something like that. And then we got our leg training in there, some hip hinge exercises, some posterior chain work, and those Hindu squats I talked about earlier. So some training for the quads, but especially for the calves as well, under decently heavy load. And then because it is an arms day, of course, I do a pretty significant amount of sets for the forearms, just as part of the arms training, essentially. And my specialization exercises at the end is abs and neck training. So I'm doing forearms, abs, and neck training in addition to training my upper arms and my legs on this day. So it's basically all limbs and core and no primary movers of the upper body. And that's day 5. Yeah. So I think I've gone pretty in depth on my strength training. You might be wondering now, this is very much lifting weights focused. When do you build your mobility? When do you build your endurance, etc.? So first of all, for mobility, I stretch every single day. Now, I don't do a ton of stretching for the upper body because I actually use my weights training as stretching as well, essentially. I always do full range of motion where I can, and I go all the way into the deep stretch with these exercises. So most of my bigger muscles on the upper body are actually, damn, my phone is almost dead. Okay, let's speed this up a little bit. Most of the bigger muscles on my upper body are pretty well stretched, pretty solid in that department. I do a little bit of stretching for some of the muscles on my upper body. I do a little bit of work for the shoulders, that type of thing. I mostly stretch my legs though. In fact, I'm currently working on being able to do the splits. So yeah, I just stretch a little bit, probably like 10 minutes every day. A little bit of stretching for hip mobility, a little bit of stretching for the hamstrings, etc. And I also occasionally do some yoga for a little bit more stretching work, but also other types of mobility, hit muscles from some angles they don't generally get hit from. This varies a lot. There are some weeks where I'll do like yoga 4 or 5 times. There are other weeks where I don't do it at all. I'd say on average, I probably do yoga somewhere between once and 3 times a week. That's probably the average. I can definitely recommend this a lot, and this is a recommendation I give in the Primal Physique course as well, to incorporate that into your routine. I got to speed this up a little bit because my battery is running out, so that's most of what I do for mobility. And in terms of general agility, not just being able to move in the full range of motion, but also kind of, hand-eye coordination, hand-foot coordination, that type of thing. I do some parkour every now and then obviously I also do martial arts. And I will do that about once or twice a week. Sometimes I do martial arts on my rest days, as is the case with Sunday typically. Sometimes I just do it on a day where I've already done strength training. The reason why this doesn't bother me is because, generally speaking, I do my strength training in the morning to maybe noon, around noon. I eat my lunch at around 12:30, and typically I train before that. So when I head to my martial arts training, which is at the end of the day, typically, maybe late afternoon, probably more like actual evening, it's usually not a problem. I've recovered a little bit, and as I mentioned in a previous video, I believe, I'm actually so much stronger, especially in relation to my size, than most people I roll with, that it's kind of okay to have a little bit of a handicap. It doesn't really hinder me as much as you might think, because I'm just in very, very good shape. And so that's generally not the limiting factor when it comes to rolling with people. And then finally, martial arts is obviously also endurance training to an extent. When I'm not training martial arts, when I'm not rolling, doing jiu-jitsu or some judo or wrestling maybe, what I will generally do is I will either go for some runs or do some skipping rope. I talk about more specific metrics for this in the Primal Physique course as well. So I have sort of a fixed number that I set for myself. I'll go out into the backyard or something and just hit that number on the skipping rope with sets of like 90 or 100. And then I go back up. If I have a little more time, if I want to get around a little bit more, maybe it's earlier in the day, sun's still out, that type of thing, I'll do some running. Or if I have a really, really bad day where I'm like really low energy, I really don't feel like doing any proper cardio, let's call it that. Breakfast alarm is hitting as well. This video is really meant to be over, it appears. So yeah, when I'm having a very, very low energy day, what I will do is just get around 15 to 20,000 steps in. Or in some cases, if I'm feeling fancy, I'll get about 5,000 steps of regular walking in at the very minimum. And then I'll throw on the weighted vest and do at least 5,000 steps extra with that. So essentially walking around as just a much heavier guy. And I do one of these, so martial arts, or some running, or skipping rope, or 15 to 20,000 steps slash 10 to 15,000 steps with the weighted vest. I do one of these essentially every day. So I'm basically doing endurance training. If I don't forget it, if I don't work all day and I completely forget about doing it, essentially Monday to Sunday, every single day, 7 days a week. This would be my general recommendation for people as well. If you train endurance every single day, you don't have to go crazy hard. You don't have to go run for an hour or something. It's really enough to do a little bit of endurance training, but do it consistently every single day. And that's going to work wonders, especially if you combine it with getting, at least your 10,000 steps in every day as well, kind of on top of your endurance training. So now that I've kind of quickly rambled through these last few points, let me finish this video because the screen is getting very dark. We're at 3%. And yeah, I'm supposed to eat my breakfast. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves, found this interesting, maybe inspiring, maybe gleaned some information that you can incorporate into your own programs, felt inspired to, change up your game a little bit, or maybe pull up the intensity a little bit on your own training, increase it to something more substantial that's going to make you more of a beast. I'm rambling again. If you did enjoy this, if you learned something, go ahead, drop a like and leave a comment if you have something to say or if you want to push the algorithm. Again, go ahead, check out the Primal Physique course down below. You can also hit me up on Instagram or Coffee if you're interested in a personalized training program or some personal one-on-one coaching. Just send me a DM and we'll talk details about that. If you want someone to look at your exercise selection or make an exercise selection for you based on your goals and where you're at, that type of thing, that's also something I do. So again, just go ahead, hit me up, and we'll talk details. If you want to see more videos of mine like this one on fitness, on training, lifting, but also just in general becoming a capable man with a powerful body, go ahead and subscribe. I also make videos on more general health topics and some philosophy type stuff. So if you're interested in that as well, you can go ahead, check out some of those videos on my channel or subscribe for future ones. And as always, activate the notification bell if you want notifications. That's going to be it. Let me quickly finish this video before my phone turns off. I'll see you guys in the next one. And until then, have a good one.